On Saturday, the Alberta NDP will choose their next leader. More than 85,000 party members expected to cast a ballot to replace the outgoing leader and former Premier Rachel Notley. There are 4 people vying for the job, and they are Kathleen Ganley, Jody Calahoo-Stonehouse, Sarah Hoffman, and Naheed Nenshi. Well, to talk about the leadership race, we are now joined by veteran Alberta journalist Graham Thomson. Graham, always good to see you. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
So listen, I need to start here with Naheed Nenshi because, you know, he has spent the least amount of time in the party, but is known right across the country. Is this leadership race a foregone conclusion?
Well, I've been saying so. My colleagues have been saying so. Many of them, in fact, people in the NDP have been saying so. Every other campaign has been saying that Naheed Nenshi is a frontrunner. Now, of course, they're hoping to catch up to him in this vote on Saturday. But the thing is, he is the one who's brought all the excitement to the party. You think back, before this race began, there were about 16,000 members of the NDP. He joins the party. They're up to 85,000 members now. Now, you could argue that's not just because of him, but the thing is, in the first few days when he joined, another candidate, Raki Pancholi, an MLA from Edmonton, she was in the race and she dropped out saying, wow, his campaign is selling the most memberships by far. And Pancholi then joined his team. It seems that numbers are behind him. The rallies, he's having rallies with hundreds of people, more than anybody else. So it would seem at this point, and he's the best known. Of course, he's known across the country, former mayor of Calgary. So it would seem, I would say, that he is definitely the front runner. A number of votes, 65,000 people have voted so far. It's about 75% of the members have cast a ballot online, by mail, or by phone. So huge turnout. And I would argue at this point that he definitely is the guy that is likely going to walk away with it on Saturday.
Okay, walk away, although not with a unanimous vote or support of the party. So talk to us a bit about the opposition that remains against Naheed Nenshi in terms of a potential leader for the Alberta NDP. Is this essentially a tension between New Democrats who perhaps want to remain more ideologically pure versus a man who might take the party more to the center of Alberta politics?
Yeah, I would say that's a good way of putting it, because yes, you do have Nenshi, who didn't join the party until just weeks before entering the race. In fact, last year, during the general election, he said he was reluctantly giving his vote to the NDP because it's better than voting for Danielle Smith and the UCP at the time. So he is not one to be carrying an NDP membership for very long, but that's part of his appeal. He is saying, look, this needn't be against the old guard versus the new guard. Let's do something new with this party. The NDP right now, he'd argue, is more of a centrist party. So let's join the party and take on the Conservative. The enemy here, he said, is the Conservatives. But yes, you're right. There is still that sort of the old guard versus the new members coming in. And that's something he is trying to play down. At the same time, it's a case here right now of just winning the leadership. And that means numbers. It's a bit like what happened 2 years ago when Danielle Smith won the UCP leadership race by flooding the party with new members. It's much the same here. So even though there are old guard out there, there's a sense that he's flooding the party with new members, and we'll see what actually happens if he wins, how he straightens that out afterwards.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, although I am going to ask you to future cast a little bit, because, you know, when you talk about the old guard, Naheed Nenshi has also talked about how the federal NDP has essentially been a drag on the party in Alberta. And there is talk about separating the provincial wing from the federal party. So what would that relationship look like? How might it change if Naheed Nenshi actually does win leadership?
Yeah, this is probably the one issue that set them apart. You've got Naheed Nenshi saying, look, it's clear that the NDP, federal NDP, is not that popular at all in Alberta, whereas the Alberta NDP is quite popular. And right now, people who join the Alberta NDP automatically become members of the federal NDP. And that's turning a number of people off. And then she said it helped cost them the election last year. So he is looking at cutting ties. Now, he's saying, look, he won't definitely do it. He'll let the members decide. But you have other candidates, namely Sarah Hoffman, saying, no, she is sticking with the party no matter what, federal and provincial. But this is one of these issues that has divided them. But it's again a case of they're not really fighting that hard against each other. The thing is, this is nothing like the leadership race for the UCP. They got really nasty. The one that Danielle Smith won got really, really combative. This leadership race, nothing like that. So when they do disagree on things like federal NDP, federal formal ties with the federal NDP, it's not really a knock-out bash. It's very much a polite debate. In fact, the debates have been quite boring because they tend to agree on almost everything. So there's no big open chasm right now. Old guard versus new guard, if you can call them that. They're not actually squabbling on stage. They're not really fighting. They're tending to aim all their vitriol at the UCP. And the idea, the members, like I've talked to the various campaigns, and they say whenever they get a little bit nasty to each other, even a hint of nastiness, the members of the NDP say, stop it. We do not want a negative campaign. We want to bring people together under the NDP banner, make it a positive party, and then move on after whoever wins on Saturday, united.
Okay, move united, and united against the United Conservative Party in Alberta. You know, Naheed Nenshi, Danielle Smith, I do want to talk about those two because they went to university together. They knew of each other. They hung out with each other before they entered politics. And when Naheed Nenshi actually talks about the premier these days, Nenshi, you know, kind of has this note of disappointment because he feels like Danielle Smith is now beholden to a more right-wing faction than what he remembers her conservatism used to be. What kind of matchup do you think that sets up if, in fact, Nenshi becomes the Alberta NDP leader?
Oh, it will get nasty. Absolutely. You're right, because he's been very outspoken against her. I mentioned last year, he was saying that, you know, he would vote for the NDP. It's a better choice than the UCP. He has been very outspoken against the UCP and especially Danielle Smith. And you're right. There's that. There's a group called Take Back Alberta, very right-wing, socially conservative. It seems to be pushing the UCP in a certain direction, more right-wing. So this has given a bigger target to the more progressive voices in Alberta. They're looking to Naheed Nenshi to be, well, I'm not arguing that in the NDP leadership vote, if he wins, that's showing how the progressives want Nenshi to be their leader to take on Smith. And the thing is, he's not tainted at all by being part of the old NDP government that was in government from 2015 to 2019. He is mayor of Calgary, but he is fresh on the provincial scene. So he has no record that can be attacked on that front. But very much, he's very critical of her. The UCP says they welcome having Naheed Nenshi as potential leader of the NDP. The thing is, they don't. I think they're very much afraid of him because he is well known. He is quite popular, and he's managed to reinvigorate the NDP. The fear for the NDP is that they lost the last election. They're just wither on the vine. He's bringing new life to the party, and that really does worry the UCP. So you can expect to have, again, before we had Rachel Notley, a very strong personality, versus Danielle Smith, another strong personality. What we're doing now is replacing, I would argue on Saturday, replacing Rachel Notley with another strong personality, and that's Naheed Nenshi. So you're going to have still two very strong personalities in the Alberta arena after Saturday.
Well, Alberta politics is never boring, Graham, so I always appreciate talking about it and appreciate speaking about it with you. Thank you for this.
It's been my pleasure.